This morning's reading comes from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentary on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This morning, the infinite Christ. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John contains some of the most profound spiritual teachings in the Bible. In the first chapter, many subtle truths are suggested concerning higher stages of self-realization. Here, John the Baptist is described as one reaching up toward that high state. Quote, "He was not that light," the Gospel tells us, "but was sent to bear witness of that light." Jesus Christ, by contrast, is described as the light itself. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. One essential truth stands out in this teaching, that Jesus came not to dogmatize people with a new teaching, but to bring them timeless, universal truths. Disciples saw the Master clothed in human form and therefore judged him in terms of his greatness relative to the greatness of other teachers. Wisdom, however, sees the Master's very greatness in terms of a cosmic unity. There's a passage in The Path by Swami Kriyananda in which this point is emphasized. The Master, Paramahansa Yogananda, explained, "The saint who attains that exalted consciousness never says, 'I am God,' for he sees it was the vast ocean that became his little wave of ego. The wave, in other words, would not claim, when referring to the little self, to be the ocean." Now, at this juncture, Debbie, who was present, cried excitedly, "But, sir, if you are one with that ocean, that means you are God." "Why I?" Master asked. "Say he. He is God." "But still, sir, you are one with him, and he is the only reality. That means you, too, are God." "But this body isn't God." "You are identified with your body, sir, so one may still say that you are God." "Well, in that case, why do you say you? You, too, are that." In a discussion of this sort, it is less confusing if we say he. "But what's the difference?" "The scripture says," Master began. "It's only your humility, sir," Debbie broke in, "that makes you distinguish between yourself and him." "How can there be humility when there is no consciousness of ego?" Now triumphantly Debbie cried, "But if you have no ego left, that means you are God." Master laughingly continued the earlier statement, which Debbie had interrupted. "The scriptures say, 'He who knows Brahma becomes Brahma.'" "There," Debbie cried, "you said it yourself." Master rejoined, still laughingly, "I didn't say it. It's the scriptures that say so." Master, in other words, would not identify those words with the human body speaking them. It was in his overarching spirit that he saw himself one with the infinite. But Debbie was unable to make this mental leap from a pure expression of infinity to infinity itself. "You quoted these scriptures, sir," he reminded Master relentlessly. "That means you agree with them." Recognizing that the distinction was perhaps too subtle for many to grasp, Master concluded, "Well, he who says he is God isn't God." And, he added with a smile, "and he who says he isn't. And there the subject rested amid general laughter. The greater a spiritual teaching, the more greatly we betray it by particularizing it with dogmas. Truth itself, not the Christian truth or the Hindu truth, incarnates on earth with the birth of a fully liberated Master. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches us in the 4th chapter, unborn, changeless, Lord of creation and controller of my cosmic nature, though I am, yet entering nature, I am dressed in the cosmic garment of my own Maya, delusion. O Bharata, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth. Taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and reestablish virtue. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you, Shane. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody today? Yay. Thank you all for coming to Sunday service today. Okay, so we're going to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. This is Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems, and this is number 23. This is the prayer demand for removing the cork of ignorance. No more shall my consciousness remain bottled in this little vessel of flesh, corked with ignorance. No more will I remain moving through the sea of cosmic consciousness, night and day, years, decades, and how many incarnations, so close, yet never able to contact thy sea. Through the bursting vibration of cosmic sound and the surging of thy holy name, I have removed the cork of ignorance which so long separated me from thee, though we lived together so closely. Now my body consciousness will meet thy all-surrounding, all-pervading consciousness. No longer will I walk heedlessly in thee, but never knowing and feeling thee. Thine image within me shall meet thine image everywhere. By releasing the I-ness in me, I will know that I am thou, and that thou alone art the little egos of us all. Om. Peace. Amen. So our topic this morning of the infinite Christ and energy, they tie together so beautifully. The infinite being such a big topic. How do we even, it's an understatement, how do we even begin to wrap our arms around it? I'm a good Italian. I want to wrap my arms around it. How do we do that when we like things to be so finite and defined and in a box, you could say? I love this cartoon that I saw many years ago of a mother cat. She was sitting there with her little kittens, and they were staring into this litter box. And the mother cat says to her kittens, "Okay, guys, it's time to think inside the box now." And that's so often what we do. You know, we want to think inside the box, but Yogananda came along and he said of divine vision, of God, he said, God is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. Again, how can we even grasp that? I think in India there's an image of a large spherical stone, and it's as close as you can get because it conveys that circumference, that consciousness, and yet it's also impersonal. But Swami Kriyananda talked a lot about this comment that Yogananda would make, that God is center everywhere, circumference nowhere. Swami Kriyananda said, we can't just say, okay, well, he's everywhere, there you go. We need to start somewhere. And where can we start? Inside of us, right inside of us, in the stillness. Yogananda reminded us that the soul loves to meditate. Every time we meditate, every time we do any of our spiritual practices, the soul loves it because we get to expand into who we really are. We're not confined in that little box anymore. And how wonderful that our topic this morning is energy tied to this very big topic. I was reminded, I read a couple of weeks ago, we were in seclusion. Seclusion is when you take some time off, whether it's a day, a week, 10 days, a month, a year, however long you can afford, and you just take some time out from your daily rhythm in life, and you just try and do your spiritual practices a little bit more deeper, longer. Well, I love reading stories of Yogananda. Well, as we know, he came to America in the 20s and he lectured all around the country. Well, he used to go running and he talked in huge halls from Radio City, big halls, small venues all around the country. Often in these bigger places, he would go running into the room. And we know that he wore orange robes and he had long hair. He'd go running in, and sometimes people could barely even see him because he was running so fast. And then he'd run to the podium and he would yell, "How is everybody? How feels everybody?" And sometimes, he would wait until he could feel that energy met his energy. Why? Because finding God, understanding the vastness of who Spirit is, takes energy, doesn't it? How can we come to God and go, well, I think I'm going to find God now. I wonder if he's going to show up. In my seclusion, I had a fun experience. I also did, Masters, Yogananda has a 9-day diet. And it's where you have a lot of citrus, steamed vegetables, raw salads, nice pure veggie broth. But at the same time, you go off of things that you love, coffee, sugar, dairy, wheat, all the wonderful things. And first couple of days, no problem. I had lots of energy. This diet, what's so hard about it? And, and it can hit you as those that have fasted or done anything like that. Sometimes day 3 and 4 is when, something has happened. And there I was lying on the sofa day 3 all day almost. And I was like, oh, woes to me, I have no energy. I was like, such a sad case. I was like, now how am I going to do this seclusion like this? I can't do it from the sofa lying down. Then I remembered, oh my gosh, Yogananda brought us the energization exercises. Many of us know Yogananda said, this is the cornerstone of our path. If we could only have one technique, if we were stranded on a deserted island, that one technique, desert island, you would still just want the energization wherever you were. And it's not only the energization are valuable because they're not only for the exercises that we're doing. What we learn is Yogananda repeatedly tells us we live in a sea of energy. Right? And we think that we get our energy from what? From having coffee, sugar, dairy, and wheat, all those things. We think that's where our energy comes from. But he says, no, that's temporary. Where we can really get our energy is the cosmic energy that we can draw into our bodies. And through the exercises, we learn how to do that. We learn how to by using our will, we're drawing in that energy, and we're tensing and relaxing different body parts. But it's not just for those exercises, right? We learn that it helps our meditation. It helps to release any residual tension. It awakens the energy, the concentration. But also we could use these principles in our everyday life. So what happens there's often the fun story that's shared at Sunday service. I think a minister was home and she was just feeling, not much willingness. Oh, maybe I'll do laundry. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just have a piece of toast or whatever. And then ring, 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 a friend calls, someone that they hadn't seen in years. And they're like, you want to go out tonight? Sure. Where did this energy come from? Where's the willingness? Yogananda says, the greater the will. What's our willingness? The greater what? The flow of energy. And then what happens when we have a greater flow of energy? We feel more joy. And what's joy? Yogananda reminds us that joy is who we are. That's who we are inside of us. That's where then the infinite can open up. But we need that energy. If we just stay on the couch, we're not going to get that far. But also the masters also promise us even a little practice of this inward religion. Even a little practice will free us. All I had to do was get off the sofa. And I started to move energy, and life was better. And then, I took the next step. I did the first exercise of the energization. It wasn't the best one I'd ever done, but that's okay. Nobody was watching in the room, but took the next one, and then the next one. It's only every little effort, one step at a time. And then all these practices that we have can help us remember who we really are. One of the other things I did while I was in seclusion, I hung out with the saints because they live in that vibration. They live in that consciousness. They know what energy is about. They know that it brings us joy. They know that it can open us more deeply to the infinite. And one saint in particular, many of you know, we're leading a pilgrimage in the fall, and we've changed the itinerary a little bit, which is just quite exciting. We're going to Spain first and then Italy. And in Spain, we'll have the opportunity to go to Avila, Spain, and that is the home of St. Teresa. She was born there in 1515. She was born into a very wealthy and aristocratic family, and if you read stories about her, she was very magnetic. Many were drawn to her, and she became one of the world's great mystics and just a much loved saint. She lived during a time of great turbulence in the early 1500s. Her brothers, and change. Her brothers were part of some of the early voyages to the New World. The Renaissance was in full bloom, so also was the Inquisition. And she was actually called before the Inquisition when the church questioned her mystical experiences. But I don't know, through her magnetism, her wisdom, her depth of who she was able to convince her accusers that her experience were really of God. And what was beautiful, she really helped us to see that we don't have to wait to know God. She says that through our own effort, through even the hustle and bustle of everyday life, through our own self-effort, again, the energy that we put into our day-to-day life, we can experience God right now. And she talked about 4 things that we can do to help us do that. First one is God reminding objects. She said, Teresa, she was really practical. She knew that after a while, familiar things, that you see, you've maybe had this experience at home, you just don't see them anymore. Even pictures of saints or statues. She suggests that don't just have these spiritual items around, reverently touch them. Take a moment to pause from your day. Interact with the pictures and statues as you pass them. Move from the heart towards them. Place a flower consciously before them. She said also, when reading about the saints, underline, highlight, make notes so that it just feels a little bit more real. He said, I thought, well, these are all little things, but they can make a difference. And I thought, well, these are things that I can do in my day-to-day life. They're not going too much outside of the box. 2, she said, use your imagination. When she first entered the convent, she would watch the nuns at their devotions. She said some of them were so moved in their prayers that they would actually weep. And she said she wasn't moved at all. She didn't weep. She said, I didn't feel it. But she said, I knew I wanted to know God. So she said she imagined God was with her as she prayed, as she went through the day, guiding and helping her. And in time, she began to feel God's presence more deeply in her life. She said, think of God. This reminds us of something Yogananda would say. Think of God as your closest friend. Think of God in the morning. Thank Him for this new day. Think of Him at the end of the day. Thank Him for the day. Think of Him throughout the day. Tell Him of your love. Be creative in how you do this. Do this from your own heart. Again, from your heart to their heart. And then she said, maintain a sense of humor. Even on the serious subject of spiritual attainment, Teresa had many great one-liners. One of them is, from silly devotions and sad-faced saints, good Lord, deliver us. A sad nun is a bad nun. But many of us know one of her most famous stories. There she was towards the end of her life. She was going to start, I believe, was yet another convent or monastery. She's in her buggy. It's winter. They're having to cross this river. They get stuck in the river. It's icy. It's cold. It's whatever. She didn't stay in that buggy. Just swings open the door, hitches up her skirt, starts to wade through the water, right? And then, as many of us know, then she sees this vision of Christ across as she's about to fall. And Christ says, don't worry, Teresa. This is how I treat all my friends. And Teresa, ever witty, doesn't miss a beat, says, my Lord, no wonder you have so few. And she gets across the river. Christ is not there anymore, but she's completely dry and warm. The masters come to remind us that they're always all around us. But the best way to tune into them is in that stillness. What happens in that stillness? We let go of those things. Just like in purification this morning, we let go of those things that we think are holding us back. I think it was Swami Satyananda that was asked. He was asked, "Are you a Hindu?" And he said, "No, I'm an undo." We're undoing these things or unpeeling, we're just, and it's inside of us already. That's why we're remembering. That's why we use that wonderful word smriti. It's the divine remembrance. We're not finding something new. Oh, I think I'll try this on and see if it fits me. It's inside of us. We're undoing those things. And I think it was a Buddha who was once asked, "What have you gained from meditation?" Great question. He answered, "Nothing." He said, "Now ask me what I've lost. I've lost anger, desire, fear, worry, etc. All of that, so that the journey that we're on is not one, again, of attaining, but we lose those desires, we lose those fears, we lose doubts, we lose all those things, the deeper we can go in the stillness. Because in the stillness, again, we discover that joy, we discover that love, we discover that peace, that true wisdom, the true power, calmness. Those qualities are inside of us, but peeling away those layers. But it hurts also. I love the story of the sculptor who wanted to create this beautiful sculpture for a church. And he went up the mountain and got this big stone, brought it down, and he realized, oh, this is going to be too big. So he just kind of cut it in half. And he starts working on one half. And that one half, the first one, starts complaining, "What are you doing? Ow, it's hurting. What are you doing? Leave me alone." And the sculptor's like, "Well, okay, I guess this part of the rock has a problem, so I'll leave him alone." So he starts working on the other half, and it still hurt, but the other half knew, he goes, "You know what? This must be happening for a reason. I trust that whatever will come through this, that I'm going to be more beautiful because of this. I'm going to feel more joy. I'll feel more love. I'll feel these qualities." And sometimes I guess it needs to hurt. And so he chipped away, and then lo and behold, he had this beautiful statue, this sculpture that he created. So he put it on the altar. And so he wanted to perform a puja, this ceremony where he's pouring honey and milk and whatever, just showering it with flowers, but he couldn't quite reach it, so he looks around and he sees that other stone. And so he takes it and he ends up stepping on it, and he's, pouring the puja, doing all of that, and then when he's done, he goes home, and so there's the one stone, there's the other one, and the one on the floor says, "Hey, what's going on? How come he was stepping on me?" And all that was going on. And the other one said, "Well, don't you realize you could have been up here? But you didn't, you were not happy. He was hurting you and you wanted him to stop." God is trying to bring out the beautiful part in us, and it does hurt at times. Just trying to remember that inside, God's love is there, God's joy is there. And remembering, reading again the lives of the saints, they just went through so many things, so many trials, all of that. But here they were, here they came through all that they went through, and they became great mystics and great saints and beautiful examples for all of us. There was a story of a man who was in prayer, and in a vision he saw a beach, and he saw 2 sets of footprints. And he realized at that moment that the one set was his, but the other set was of Christ. And he realized that Christ was his guru, and Christ would walk along with him on the beach. But then he said he noticed that at one point there was only one set of footprints. And so he prayed to Christ. He goes, "Where were you when I was going through my trials? You left me." And Christ said, "No, I didn't leave you." He said, "My child, that is when you only saw one set of footprints, that's when I carried you through your trials." And then he said, "You see that long streak in the sand? That's when I dragged you through the..." Sometimes we have to be dragged. It's okay. The masters just come and just say, "Open yourself, open your heart to me, and I will enter." That's the promise of the masters. I will enter. I will take charge of your life. I will take you through situations that are difficult, situations that are wonderful. You'll go through all of it, but that's okay. I will be there with you, dragging you, carrying you, forever there with you. I'd like to end with part of a poem called Samadhi. Excuse me. This is a poem that Yogananda wrote on the New York City subway, I have to say, with pride coming from New York City. he wrote, this is an experience of cosmic consciousness. And I'm just read the last part, but another thing that I would add to St. Teresa's list is share this experience with others. Environment is stronger than willpower. The power of satsang, the power of fellowship, to do this together, because it's not easy, because it hurts, because it's hard, because we need somebody to get us off the couch sometimes. We need people to energize with. We need people to meditate with. It invigorates everything. So to do this together, we're so blessed to be able to come together every Sunday and share this time. The folks at Laurelwood are doing a fun thing. Yogananda said of this poem, Samadhi, he said, read it every day and memorize it. So at Laurelwood, they've got whiteboards around Harmony Hall and whatever, and they've taken on the exercise of memorizing this poem. And I thought, how fun to do it together as a group. And you can walk around. We had finished a class, and somebody came up and wrote a stanza of the poem on the whiteboard. It's quite long, so I'll just read the last part. But again, it shows, have fun with this, and remember, just even if a leaf, a flower, these small things, even just the smallest thing, if it's offered with our love, with our devotion, it's accepted by the masters with such great joy. So really, all we need to do is just really be where we are, take the next step, love God, read Samadhi. So this is the last verse. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt. Ocean of mind, I drink all creation's waves. Four veils of solid, liquid, vapor light lift aright. Myself and everything enters the great myself. Gone forever, fitful, flickering shadows of mortal memory. Spotless is my mental sky, below, ahead, and high above. Eternity and I, one united ray, a tiny bubble of laughter, I am become the sea of mirth itself. Amen.